Okay, now that everything is set up in your system, let's jump in and talk about connecting to a cluster, getting a document, and accessing its values. It all starts here. There's no point in having a database if you can't get at the data. So what modules are you going to need? Well, all the external modules required for this course are available via NPM. Couchbase, Express, we'll also use Body Parser, as well as one called Node.js for a small technique, and then a bit later the Ottoman ODM framework. Again, all of these modules are easy to install from NPM, and there's many more community-supported modules available as well. So how do you identify your cluster and open a bucket? Well, as you imagine, you'd require the Couchbase module and assign it locally. That's the module that is the access point for all of the tooling. You're then going to need your cluster URL as well as a bucket name and a password if one has been configured. Now we also note here that you might have multiple URLs because one of the great beauties of Couchbase is its simplicity. Every node is identical and you can connect to whichever one makes sense for a given request. The SDK reference is used to create the cluster reference itself, and then you open the bucket through that cluster reference with the name and, if you've provided one, a password. The password would be set in the admin UI through bucket access control, and you'll get walked through that in the coming lab. The SDK operations themselves, such as get, insert, etc. that we'll be looking at, are then available via this bucket reference. This bucket reference will persist until you've disconnected it. To get a document by its ID, or its key as you might choose to call it, well, the bucket exposes get and related operations. The get operation itself requires a specific document ID or key, which you would see directly there in the bucket. It's whatever you've provided. And then a callback, as you would expect for a node. And you would handle your error in whatever sensible fashion. And then the result is whatever comes back for that particular key. The result itself is, as you'd expect, a JSON document. And it has both the CAS for the document and a value. We'll get into that in just a moment. So it's the value property of that JSON document that has the JSON object itself. So in result.value, you would get the underlying values that you're looking for. So how are these JSON documents and objects distinct? So the JSON document itself includes metadata. The SDK call returns a JSON document, which as you see here, includes a CAS value. This CAS is a sometimes called check and set or compare and swap value. This document cannot be replaced without having the most current CAS value. We'll have a chance to look at that a bit ahead, but as you can imagine, this is how concurrency is managed. The value is the JSON data itself. There are, of course, as we said, numerous ways to manipulate JSON, but that's beyond the scope of this course. In the lab, we're going to have you connect to a cluster, open a password-protected bucket, get a JSON document object, and take a look at its values. Really, you can think of this as sort of the hello world to make sure that you've got your environment set up correctly. Now, one thing I'd like to point out is once you load up your lab exercises, you'll see, for example, here's lab 2, and you can open up the app.js file. And the steps that you're going to take are documented in a high-level way here inside the code. Now, if you want to take a more challenging approach to the exercises, just go directly to these, read the comments, and do your best. Make it happen. Or you can go to the workbook where you'll get more explanation as well as detailed running code. In the PDF itself, you'll find you could copy and paste every line of code you're going to need in this course, but you may want to go just to the comments first to challenge yourself. You can also go to the lab solutions where you'll find the solution code for every one of the lab steps that you'll be called on to complete, with two exceptions. Later on in the course, there are 2 challenge exercises at the end of 2 of our labs where we ask you to reuse a technique you've learned for a different purpose and then set you loose to figure out how to do that completely on your own. So, take the course how you wish, challenge yourself, and as I like to say, stick around. There's a lot more to come, and I hope you have fun doing it.